I'm speaking to Marcin Jerzewski, who's a research fellow at Taiwan NextGen Foundation, where he leads the new Southbound Policy Research Program. Marcin, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Staś.
So we're talking today about Taiwan's, or rather Poland's donation of 400,000 vaccine doses to Taiwan in recent days. It's the first such donation that Poland has made. Why has Poland decided to help Taiwan in this particular way at this particular moment?
I would like to emphasize that medical cooperation between Taiwan and Poland, and specifically Taiwan's support for Polish medical institutions, precedes the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Taiwanese representatives have generously donated equipment to neonatal intensive care units and other hospital wards. Even more notably, Taiwan generously supported the Central Veterans Hospital in Lodz, and specifically the cardiology ward in that university hospital. Specifically within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, we should bear in mind that Poland received a very big share of what Taiwan decided to donate to the European Union member states. Out of approximately 7 million medical masks that went to the EU, Poland received as many as 1 million on top of 25,000 pieces of other PPE. Therefore, it is understandable that Poland, bearing in mind the importance of its relationship with Taiwan, wanted to reciprocate these continued sustained gestures of goodwill.
This recent donation comes just a few months after President Andrzej Duda signed off on a historic agreement for legal cooperation on criminal matters. What's behind this kind of recent, I suppose, strengthening in ties, and what do Poland and Taiwan share as partners?
I believe that economic development strategies of Taiwan and Poland share a lot of positive synergies. We see a lot of parallels between, for instance, President Tsai Ing-wen's 5+2 Innovative Industries Plan and areas of economic development that are explicitly prioritized by the current administration in Poland. At the same time, I think that we may want to pay attention to similarities in political development trajectories between both countries, both of which can be classified as third-wave democracies, even bearing in mind recent instances of democratic backsliding in Poland. That being said, I believe that Poland's approach towards expanding its relation with Taiwan is somewhat idiosyncratic, especially when compared to other countries in the region. And that's because Poland has been pursuing what I call a strategy of dual engagement. It is quite unique that Warsaw has been able to maintain an upward trajectory in its relations with both Taipei and Beijing. I believe that even though Central Eastern European countries, including Poland, were not among the first European Union member states to devise strategies for engagement with the Indo-Pacific region, ministries of foreign affairs in these Central Eastern European capitals do not remain oblivious to the rise of the Indo-Pacific concept, and diversification of relations in what is arguably the most dynamic part of the world is very much on the radar of top diplomats, also in Warsaw, and no strategy for engagement with the Indo-Pacific can be considered complete if it doesn't include Taiwan.
I mean, you kind of touched on this point in your response to that last question, but how does Poland's response, differ from those of its Central European neighbours? I mean, we've seen donations from Lithuania and Slovakia, and of course the much covered news of Lithuania's decision to open a representative office in Taiwan. How is Poland's approach to ties between, to balancing its relationship between China and Taiwan different to those of its neighbours?
The uniqueness of Poland's approach lies in the fact that Warsaw has been able to simultaneously maintain a positive momentum in developing its ties with Beijing and with Taipei. This dual trajectory is something that we have not seen in other Central Eastern European countries. In Slovakia, in Czechia, in Lithuania, we are seeing that political elites at different levels of governance are becoming increasingly more assertive when it comes to speaking out against China's human rights violations, as well as their own domestic disenchantment with the unsatisfactory level of economic and other engagement with China. I believe that when it comes to the future trajectory of Poland-Taiwan relations, we can expect a generally upwards trajectory, albeit within strict bounds of adherence to the One China policy. The Polish Foreign Minister Zbigniew Rau has just concluded an official visit to Lithuania, and during one of the press conferences, Minister Rau stated explicitly that Poland's stance was clear, that Poland adhered to One China principle, and that he believed Taiwan was a part of China. So, despite these positive developments between Warsaw and Taipei, we should acknowledge that this might not be the right time to expect a major policy shift in Warsaw vis-a-vis China, or even we shouldn't expect more assertiveness in speaking out against China.
Marcin Jerzewski, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.